In my last video, we covered two big myths about socialism, but we have more. So here's myth 3. Socialism brings good things if it's democratic socialism.
The examples of failed socialism that critics use are not socialist democracies, but authoritarian states.
Democratic socialists denounce all that. The key word for them, democratic. They believe that both the government and the economy should be run by the people by way of the ballot box.
Esta es la hora del pueblo bolivariano.
But Venezuela's socialist was elected.
Aquí no hay dictadura. Yo he sido electo aquí 3 veces.
They can start off democratically elected, and then once they centralize control over the economy, it becomes impossible to democratically unelect them.
Economist Ben Powell.
Now, Maduro rules about ordering state employees to vote for him or they lose their job.
Maduro blatantly buying votes.
They put food aid stations next to polling places and you get rewarded with rations if you vote correctly. Now democracy there is a sham.
It always becomes authoritarian? Always?
Everywhere you try socialism, that's what you get.
Why?
It's hard to exercise political freedom if you don't have economic freedoms. If you're dependent upon the state for your livelihood, you lose your ability to use your voice to oppose them because you can be punished.
But unfortunately, people don't realize that when they're promoting democratic socialism.
Democratic socialism is your kid's public school.
It's the researchers and scientists paid with our taxes.
It's our interstate highway system.
We're not purely capitalist. There are some industries that are government-owned, operated, and controlled, socialized, if you will. It's no accident that when you look at these and think about things that are inefficiently done and underperforming, our public education, our congested streets, these socialized industries don't work well.
But what about
Norway? It's as socialist as they come.
Instead of Cuba or China, think Sweden.
myth 4? Socialism does work well in Scandinavia, but Scandinavian countries are not socialist.
Sweden isn't socialist. Volvo is a private company. Go to restaurants, hotels, they're privately owned. Markets organize the vast majority of Swedish economic activity.
But Sweden
Did have a period in the 1970s and 1980s when we had something that resembled socialism, a big government that taxed and spent heavily. There were waiting lines to get health care. People couldn't get the pension that they depended on for the future. At that point, the Swedish population just said, enough, we can't do this.
So Sweden cut taxes and cut government spending. They privatized trains, sold state-owned businesses.
When I talk about democratic socialism, I'm looking at countries like Denmark.
When American politicians wrongly called Scandinavia socialist, Denmark's prime minister came to America to refute them.
Denmark is far from a socialist planned economy. Denmark is a market economy.
In fact, Denmark today is more free market than America.
With much freedom to pursue your dreams and live your life.
Finally, myth 5. Socialism is completely different from fascism. When a congressman said,
the potential is out there for another Hitler, socialist like Hitler, to come along.
Another congressman said he was wrong.
It's the Nazis that's terrible, not the socialists. They were Nazis that killed Jews, and I would get offended when you compare socialists to Nazis. They were fascists.
It's true that fascism and socialism aren't exactly the same, but they do have a lot in common.
They both replace market decision-making with command and control. While socialism abolishes private property and replaces it with state ownership, fascism leaves private ownership in nominal terms at least, but replaces decision-making with state control and orders. As an average person living your life, whether under socialism or fascism, you lose your autonomy, your control over your own future. Only under capitalism do you have the freedom to say no. Entrepreneurs offer you their services, they offer you employment. You can say no and choose a better path for yourself. You don't get that same type of choice when someone else is planning the economy.
Powell and another economist wrote a book about socialist countries.
We went to Socialism 2018, the biggest gathering of young socialists, and they pointed out lots of problems in the United States, problems with migration, with war, with policing. The problems they were identifying were the product of bad government that the U.S. is giving them, not capitalism.
Socialism appeals because it promises fairness and equality.
Resources should be allocated to those who need them.
They hear the preaching of socialism about equality, but they don't look on what it actually delivers. The history of humanity is of poverty, starvation, early death, This was true throughout our history until very recently. In the last 20 years, we've seen more humans escape extreme poverty than any other time in human history, and that's because of markets.